Hello everyone, this is Sri Kante and today we are going to explore something that affects every part of our lives, our thoughts. Now, the way that we think impacts the way that we feel, the decisions that we make, and even how we see other people. Now, this presentation is all about understanding our minds, recognizing mental habits, and also learning how to make better choices by becoming more aware of our thought patterns. Now, if you ever had a thought you weren't sure, you could always trust, and you're in the right place. Now, let me start with a story. But that sounds true, but it isn't. Okay. Now try imagining or picturing this. Okay. A man pulls up to a petrol station in United Kingdom. He's smoking. He lights another cigarette and his arm catches fire and he panics so much, right? But the police comes and arrests him, right? Now that this story might sound believable, but right, and it also seems like you might see something like this on the news, but the thing is that it's completely made up. It's like a fake story. Now what's the point? Well, the point here is powerful. We often believe something not because we have checked it, but because it's told confidently, or it's told realistically, or it could be told in a very dramatic way. Now, our brains are basically wired to believe the coherent stories very quickly. Now, this makes us very vulnerable to misinformation, rumors, and even biases disguised as truth. Now, let me tell you another story, okay? A father and a son robs at a liquor store. Now, the father is shot and killed. Now the son is taken to the police station, and the police chief sees him and says, "That is my son." Now, most people go right, but wait, how can that just be? His father just died, right? But the answer is very simple over here. Now, the police chief is his mother, so our brains made an assumption about how we imagine the chief as a man without even realizing it. And that's a cognitive bias. Now, this is not just about sexism, it's about how quickly we fill in blanks without questioning. Now, these assumptions shape the way that we treat others and the way that we make decisions. Now, let us talk about the thoughts inside our heads. Now, every person has random thoughts. Now, some of the thoughts might be helpful and some of the thoughts might be also harmful. Now, some of them can also be completely bizarre, right? But what matters isn't what thoughts come up, but what you do with them matters the most. Now, the speaker in the story says that he's happily married, but still notices attractive people, and that's like human, right? That's what every human being does. Now, the key is he doesn't act on those thoughts, and this shows the self-awareness and self-control, and that's okay to have thoughts, and it's okay to have thoughts. Now, it's also okay to question them too, but it's how we respond that defines us how the way that we are. Now, in this slide, now this is one of like the biggest mysteries in psychology and philosophy. Now, now most psychologists and philosophers have this question: where do our thoughts come from? Now, some people say that it might come from God or the devil or the Holy Spirit or whatever, right? And others just say that they're just chemical patterns in the brain. Now, whatever your perspective is, religiously, spiritually, or even scientifically, but it can be anything. But the main thing is we all have the thoughts. Now, some can inspire us, some can even also confuse us, and some also can tempt us. Now, and we all need to learn how to respond to them with wisdom and not just impulse. Now, just because I feel something doesn't mean it's true. Now, let's say that again because it's so powerful. Powerful. Just because I feel something doesn't mean it's true. Now, You feel like you might feel like a failure, and that does not mean you're one. Okay, you might feel like something bad will happen, and it doesn't mean and that doesn't mean that it will. Now, emotions are real, but they are not always reliable. Now, if you treat every feeling like a fact, you will live in a constant state of fear or doubt. Now, instead of doing all of those, try noticing your emotions, but check the evidence before acting on them. Now, let us talk about memory and how it can trick us. Now, we often think memory is like a video recording. It's not. It's more of like a edit. It's more of like an edited movie. Now, our brain filters reality in three ways. Now, generalizations. Now, all politicians lie, or all men are the same. Now, these aren't facts. These are just shortcuts. Okay, that's like the simplest version of the definition that I could say. Okay, and then the second one is the deletions. Now, we often forget the parts of the story that makes us look bad, and this is true. And now, thirdly, distortions. We twist what happened to match how we feel. Okay, now all these means this means that even if your strongest memories could be slightly wrong, even your strongest memory could be slightly wrong or completely wrong. Now, let us understand the dangers of assumptions. Now, one of the most dangerous habits our brain has is assuming that you're always right. Now, that assumption keeps us from growing. Now, this can often lead to misunderstanding others. This can also lead to making unfair judgments, and it can also lead to reacting based on emotions instead of facts. Now, the smarter move is to say, I might be wrong. Now, that phrase is a sign of wisdom and not weakness. Now, here's the power. Now, how focus influences our emotions. Now, here's a powerful truth. Where your focus goes, your feelings follow. Right? Now, if you constantly focus on fear, injustice, anger, and all of those, now those feelings will grow. But if you train your focus on peace, kindness, curiosity, and all of those positive emotions, those grow too. Now, think of someone who gets pulled into an extremist group of conspiracy. Now, often it starts because they only listen to one side. We need to help people, especially the young people, and ask questions, and then they need to also explore different views and then learn to think independently. Now, the important takeaway today is to know thyself. Now, this ancient phrase reminds us to reflect on our inner world, right? Now, ask yourself, what do I believe? Where did that belief come from? Does it still make sense? Or am I reacting based on truth or just a feeling? Now, every action, every decision, every emotion begins with the thought itself. Now, if we want to grow, we must slow down, examine those thoughts, and choose which ones to follow. And that's how you can build like a strong mind and a meaningful life. And also, if you also want to live wisely, we also need to pause, reflect, and choose which thoughts we act on. And not all thoughts deserve power. Now try training your mind and you shape your own life. And then yeah, that's the end of the today's lesson. And thank you for watching. Bye.